So here's some real talk for that brain of yours. We all have habits, yeah? We have some good habits and we have some bad habits. We have habits that serve us and increase the quality of our lives and enhance the quality of our lives, make our lives better. But then we also have some bad habits that slow us down, that stop us and even damage us and hurt the quality of our lives. Truth of the matter is, the life that you have right now, the life that you live right now, is a result of the quality of the habits that you've had through time. Some habits that you still do, and some habits that you did a long time ago, maybe you stopped, but we often are suffering the consequences of those habits that we had. And a lot of people think, well, wait a minute. So are you saying that if I have more good habits, then the quality of my life will always be better? That's a common belief. The truth of the matter is, one bad habit can cancel out all of the good that a good habit does. Silly example is, if you got the habit of getting up early and eating the right kinds of food and working out and exercising and having a great diet and that kind of thing, but then you also have a bad habit of smoking cigarettes or drinking too much alcohol, then those two things right there will cancel out all the good of the good habits that you've had. So I want to talk to you a little bit about what is a habit, and B, what causes a habit, and C, what we can do about it to change it. Because wouldn't that be great if we could change our habits, if we could program ourselves to have better habits, and how we could cancel out the bad habits? Would you use it? Of course you would. And so let's start with this. What is a habit? What is it that makes us, what is it something that we habitually do, that we unconsciously do? Well, here's my definition. A habit is a behavior and or a feeling and or a thought that is repeated over and over again and acted upon. It's an urge that is acted upon, that is repeated over and over again, and sometimes we do it unconsciously. That's what a lot of people believe as well, but I'd like to add to it as well, because it's not always true that way. It's not that people are unconscious of a habit they're doing. That's not true, because oftentimes you know you're doing something that you shouldn't be doing. You know, I've counseled, I've worked with a lot of people that have had habits with drugs, habits with alcohol, habits with just, doing different things that were costing their lives. And they always say the same thing. I know I'm doing it. I know I shouldn't do it. But my brain, and I do it automatically. I do it anyway. My brain makes excuses, talks me out of doing the right thing. Well, that is the habit that you have to attack. See, a lot of people don't realize that a habit is nothing more than an urge that is acted upon, but it is acted upon because the brain tells you to act upon it automatically. It defaults to that. That brain comes up with all kinds of excuses, says, I'll do it tomorrow, or this is the last time that I'm going to do it, or it's not that bad, or blah, 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 over and over again. But the truth of the matter is, it always starts. You've heard me say this before. It's always top down. As I think, so I feel. As I feel, so I do. So remember, a habit is just something that is acted upon. It is a repetition of the thoughts that we think. It's a repetition of the feelings that we have. And it is a repetition of the action and the activities they do. It is that simple. And so you got to ask yourself, well, how are habits created? Where do they come from? Now, there's two different answers. And the answers are actually the same thing, but one just works faster than the other. One is just simply repetition. You do something over and over again. I call it human physics. Physics is the study of movement, the cause and effect of movement, yeah? You've heard me say this before, that you pull the string on this end, that's movement, yeah? But on the other end, what's happening? There is an effect to the cause called pulling this string. There is physical movement here, and there's going to be physical movement on the other end, which means that anything that happens, Einstein said that, for any action, there's always an equal or greater reaction. And that's the way we are with habits. If we do something, if we move a certain way, if we say something, if we think a certain thing, if we feel a certain way, there is going to be a result. If you think a certain thing, if you think I should do this, but then your brain goes, no, we'll do it tomorrow. Habitually, that has stepped in. Then guess what? There is that thinking causes you to feel a certain way, and that feeling causes you to do something, and that habit done over and over again, that behavior that you did as a result of that thought and that feeling, If you do it enough times over and over again, human physics steps in, and that is that anything that is repeated by a human being, that is done over and over again, that human being will get better at it. It will become what we call a conditioned response. Repetition, we've heard this 1,000 times. Repetition is the mother of all skill, isn't it? That's practice and rehearsal and doing something over and over again, because if you do it, then you're going to get better at it. That's all there is to it. But a lot of people don't look at it that way. They don't look at it as it's also that way with the negative things as well. Even though those negative things, even in the beginning, don't feel good. There are reasons why we keep on doing it. I've never met one person that wanted to stop smoking that said, yeah, the first time I took a puff off of that cigarette, I went, oh, this is beautiful. This is amazing. This tastes great. I want to keep doing this. No. What happened when they smoked that cigarette? Maybe you've experienced this. You take a puff off the cigarette, you cough your guts out, your eyes water, your nose runs, and it's your body telling you this is bad for you. Don't do this. Prolonged use of this could cause death. That's your body responding that way. But why do you keep on doing it? Why do you keep on doing it? What makes the person keep on doing it? And it's synonymous with anything, by the way. I use, drinking alcohol or, too much alcohol or smoking cigarettes or doing drugs or anything like that. Why do we keep on doing it? Well, there's a couple reasons. Well, first off, let me come back to that for a second, why we keep on doing it. But that's the first way, it's just repetition, doing something over and over again for whatever reason. And by the way, always, whenever we behave, whenever we do something, it is preceded by a thought. It is preceded by whatever you're saying to yourself in that moment and whatever you're focusing on in that moment. Meaning, and again, I'm using cigarettes as an example. When you pick up that cigarette, it is preceded by a thought that says, hey, I want a cigarette. That says, hey, and let's say it's the first time, it says, hey, I want to smoke this cigarette because so-and-so smoked this cigarette, or I saw this commercial, or so on and so forth, and it looked cool. And it looks like it's fun. That conversation is going on inside your head, and the image that is being made as a result of that conversation causes your heart to feel a certain way, causes your body to release endorphins and dopamines that says, let's try this out. And as a result of that feeling, then we do it. Now, so again, I'm going to talk about why we continue to do the bad habits and even the good habits. And it's the same thing with the good habits. It is preceded by a thought that says, hey, let's exercise today. Hey, let's eat this right food. Hey, let's make this phone call. Hey, let's talk to these people. Hey, let's do this. And the heart says, yeah, this feels good. Let's do it. And then we do it and we get a result and we continue to do it over and over again. Then pretty soon we get good at it. You ever wonder why some people have no problem, I'm one of it, getting in front of the camera or getting in front of thousands of people and talking? And most people on the planet, it is the most terrifying thing in the world. Fear of rejection is the number one fear of human beings. Well, why is it that I have a habit of looking forward to it, to be happy about it, to be excited about it, and so many other people where others don't? You'll find that out here in a second. So it is just repetition that is done over and over again that will create a habit. The other thing is you can create a habit very, very quickly. Very quickly. Now, you can still utilize repetition, but you know what? The more emotional you are while you are doing anything at all, the more you will quicken the pace of it becoming a habit. That's right. When you get excited or when something happens that creates a high level of emotion, good or bad, you will be, and by the way, a habit is just another form of a belief that this is what you do, who you are. This is how I behave. But something can happen in the moment. You had situations before where something happened. You put your hand on the stove and that stove burns you because there was pain, it was hot, and you got a habit of never touching the stove again. I know this sounds crazy. I know that's simple, but the same process works. There was emotional intensity. You see, your parents could have told you, don't touch that stove. Don't touch that stove. And your logic says, well, my parents said, don't touch that stove. But then one day you touch that stove and boom, emotion like crazy. And all of a sudden your body says, don't do that again. And a habit is instilled in you instantly. Now that's a radical example of it, but you can utilize that by having emotional intensity whenever you want to do anything at all. You see, when I have the opportunity to coach and to mentor high level, let's just say sports figures, if you will, NBA players and tennis players and basketball players. I said in the NBA, but anything, you say golf, anything. And when I work with these people, you see them practicing and they're having trouble. You know, I work with a very famous golfer who was having trouble. And guess what? He was having trouble putting the ball, getting it in the hole. His other shots were great and everything, and he knew that. He had a great swing. But when it came down to putting that ball in the hole, putting that ball in the hole, you could see it in him. He had a habit of slumping over and his look on his face like this, and he'd get really worried. That was his habit that he'd done over and over again. And I asked him, so what do you do when you put the ball in the hole? And he goes, well, you know, I put it in the hole. I go, I got it. And I said, okay, well, let's try another habit. And this is, again, I'm getting a little ahead of myself, kind of telling you how you're going to change your habits, and that is this. What I had him doing is anytime he hit the ball, and even if it got close to it, even if first off, to have a habit of putting a big smile on his face and changing his physical body and doing all those things and saying to himself certain things, that ball's going in the hole. And even when it didn't, instead of going, doing like that, have him get excited about it. Well, I got excited because I got excited. And then guess what happens? Because I watched tapes of this individual, and guess what? When he used to walk up to putt the ball, it would be like, okay, absolute certainty, boom, put it in. Now it's, you see it in his face, and he's got that slumped over look. So what I'm saying is this, I would get him excited while he was learning to put it in the hole, get him excited, and increase his game 100-fold. 100-fold. I'm getting ahead of myself. So you got to ask yourself why. So first off, those are the two things. Number one, repetition, anything that you do over and over again, which says if you want to change a habit, I'm going to show you how to, first you got to interrupt that bad habit first. But if you want to change a habit, step number one is you got to decide the habit that you want. Getting up early, staying up late, doing the extra stuff, eating the right kinds of food or whatever. Decide that's the habit that you wanted to do. Number two, you got to write it down. Number three, you got to schedule it when you're going to do it. And number four, you got to get excited about it when you do it. And you got to get excited about it when you don't do the bad habit. And when you don't do the bad habit, you don't get upset about it. You get excited because you caught yourself. This is counterintuitive to a lot of people, but I'm here to tell you this is what happens. So the reason why this person will continue to smoke this cigarette is because their brain says, if I smoke this cigarette, then I'll be cool. If I smoke this cigarette, then people will like me. If I smoke this cigarette, then I'm going to be like that person that I admire or whatever. Or the brain and by the way, this is unconscious thought. We're not even conscious that we're saying this. We could be saying consciously that, I don't want to smoke this cigarette. If I do this again, then I'm going to feel bad and it's going to hurt my health. We can say that stuff consciously, but if you got that unconscious talk going on underneath, it's going to win every time. Not to mention, so many of our bad habits, like smoking, drinking, drugs, and alcohol and things like that, they have a chemical effect. There's a chemical, physical effect that's going on inside of us. But you got to ask yourself, are there people that quit? Are there people that don't do it anymore? Are there people that develop another habit? And the answer is yes. How they did it? Really, really simple. Like I said, step number one, decide the habit that you want to have. Step number two, write it down. Step number three, do it. And when you do it right, celebrate. And step number four, when you do it wrong, celebrate that you caught yourself. And I know this sounds crazy, but those four things will help you move on to the next habit. Try it out. Now, there's some other things that you can do. And by the way, if you've heard me talk about this before, there's something called a pattern interrupt. And that is every time you catch yourself in that craving mode that you got to have this, you want to do this or something, and you got one of these going on your face, you got to change it. You got to interrupt that pattern. You got to stop and go, okay, wait a minute. What do I want? And go back to that list, that 4 list. What do I want? And praise yourself. Praise yourself. You'll hear me say this all the time. Praise is if repetition is the mother of all skill, then praise is the father. Meaning it's what speeds it up. You see, what people do is they beat themselves up like crazy. The achiever's fatal flaw. Or they tell themselves, I'm going to do it later. And they let themselves off the hook. And then when they let themselves off the hook, they eat the cake or they drink the alcohol, and they procrastinate and they hesitate. And then they beat themselves up later because they did that. Don't do that. When you want to do something and you feel like you want to do it and you get in that conflict, you know the one I'm talking about, where the devil's on one side, the angel's on the other side going, do it, do it, do it, do it. And the other one's going, don't do it, don't do it, don't do it. Okay, that's a pattern that you're in. That's a habit that you're in. So what you got to do in that moment, you got to go, wait a minute, stop and brush both of them off. I know this sounds silly. It's a silly little metaphor. Brush both of them. I'm going to shake them up. Here's what I want. Let me go back to my list. Here's what I want. I want to eat healthy, or I want to make these phone calls and I want to start this business. I want to do this. I want to get up early. I want to stay up late. I want to do the extra stuff that it takes, and I'm going to do it now. And then in every step of the way, once you've done that, once you've interrupted that pattern, three things happen. Number one, you're no longer in that craving, even if it's just for a moment. Even if it's just for a moment. And the second thing that happens is that you create what's called a scotoma, a blank spot on your brain. That's a vacuum. And the third thing is, it is the opportunity for you to put whatever you want in there. So again, let me reiterate. You're in the bad habit, or you're thinking about it, this craving, I want to do this or whatever. And you got to do those four things first. Write it down. Write down what it is that you want. And by the way, as you start to write it down, your brain, just the habit of looking at it over and over, your brain believes it's possible. It truly does. First, like I said, decide whatever it is. And then when you find yourself, and by the way, don't wait. Don't wait. I call it, do the preemptive strike. Kill the monster while it's a baby. If you got a fear of dogs and you come into my office, there's going to be a dog there. Why? Because I want you to go into that unresourceful state, that bad habit that you normally do, so I can interrupt that pattern. Have you stand up, shake yourself out. Reward, reward, reward. These are very, very simple steps. Very simple steps. Remember, nothing changes unless you do something about it. And you got to get the habit of doing it. And what makes you want to do it, what makes you want to develop and continue to do the habit, is always praise, is always some sort of joy. Because in the end, that's what made you continue doing what you're doing before. When you eat the cake, when you don't want to eat the cake, there's some sort of joy that, oh, this cake tastes good. When you smoke that cigarette and you finally get used to it, and your friends think you're cool, and you start to get the effect, the physical effect of the nicotine in your system, it's just giving you some sort of pleasure, some sort of reward, which makes you, like I always say, the carrot on the stick makes you keep on going towards it. But what you're not doing is giving yourself credit for not doing that. Or more specifically, you're not giving yourself credit for doing something else. Even if you don't do it perfect the right time. Remember with the golfer, it's not that he's hitting it right every single time. What I do is I get him to interrupt the pattern instead of going, damn it, I didn't do it. I didn't get it in the hole again. Instead of doing that, I have him go, oh, okay, I caught myself freaking out, okay? What did I do right? Oh, I got it this right. What did I do right? And they start to ask themselves, and they go back to those four things. Super, super simple stuff. Take these things and do something about it, because as you do something, you'll get the result. I want to say this. I always say lastly, this isn't lastly, but sort of lastly, is this. A saying that I love is, the spoils in life don't go to those who just desire. Don't go to those that are just smart. Don't go to those who have a level of intelligence and knowledge before more than other people. The spoils in life, the good stuff, the habits, the lifestyle, what I call being wealthy, healthy, happy, and financial and abundant. Those spoils, those rewards go to people who do. You see, it's not willpower that changes things. We all will do something. We feel like we will do it when there's too much pain. Or there's a lot of pleasure. We'll say, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do it. I promise I'm going to do it tomorrow. We promise ourselves. But if we do nothing about changing that habit, then willpower remains just something that you will do. What you need is do power. The spoils in life go to those that do. And so these steps that I've told you, they're really simple steps, but there's something you got to do. And as you do them, you're going to get a result. Be kind to yourself, reward yourself, do those 4 steps. Go through them, and remember this, life is always exactly what you dare to make it. And fortune, whatever you consider a fortune is, I call it being wealthy, healthy, happy, and financially abundant. Fortune always favors the bold. So the trick to life is to boldly step up and dare to make your life magnificent. I love you, and I'll see you at the top. I'm out.